Hello and welcome back to Harry's Jeti Clinic. In this episode, I'm going to show you something that I have invented myself, which is a new way to set up the assist gyro. Maybe someone else has also managed to invent this way of setting it up and they've published it. If they have, fine. I'm afraid I've not come across it, in which case I managed to independently invent it. Or maybe I'm the first one to at least publish this. I have not been willing to show you this until I could flight test it. I had the idea a long time ago, but I've been waiting for a chance to test it in flight to prove that nothing catastrophic happens and that it does indeed actually make anything better. It does. So what is this? Well, it's that if you're not moving the sticks, the assist gyro is in heading mode. But as soon as you touch the sticks, it jumps into rate mode. And let's have a look at what this means in practice. My beautiful assistant today is a Hawker Demon, which I built a couple of years ago from the Gordon Whitehead plan, which was originally published way back in 1977. Back then, of course, it was for a little 20 glow motor. But with modern electrics, it's much nicer because you don't have that horrid cylinder head and silencer sticking out. It doesn't vibrate itself to bits and it doesn't get covered in the oil. So what do we mean? What's going to actually happen? Let's take a look at the elevator here. I'll tip the model onto its nose. You can see it's in heading mode because it's holding elevator and trying to apply it. I'll cancel that. The problem here is that I'm trying to do three things with two hands. So watch this. I'll move. It's now in heading mode because I'm not moving the sticks. Bring the tail down, full down elevator to try and correct it because it's in heading mode. I'll now touch the ailerons and it goes back into rate mode. At which point the surface jumped to neutral, because it come out of heading into rate mode, and it's now back in heading mode straight away because I released aileron. So watch this as I come up. Oops, daisy. It's in heading mode and it's still in heading mode. Okay. How do I do it and why? Well, this model is quite, I wouldn't say skittish, but it's not especially stable. Being a small model and lightweight, it gets bounced around in any little bits of turbulence, and it's not especially good at holding a straight line. So if you're trying to do a nice flyby at head height along the runway in front of you, you're constantly making little corrections, even with it in rate mode. But in heading mode, oh, it's gorgeous. Just straight along the runway in front of you without wandering offline. Now, the concept is not mine. I have read many times on internet forums that the way the powerbox eye gyro works is if you're in heading mode, it will move to rate mode as soon as you touch the sticks and jump back into heading mode once you release the sticks. I don't know if it's true, even though I have many powerbox eye gyros. I've never bothered testing it. So we can emulate that through the Jeti software. What we can't do is something else I've read that the powerbox eye gyro does, is that if you're in heading mode, you can still also keep, for instance, the rudder on rate mode. The Jeti Assist does not offer the option to have both modes running at the same time. It's everything in rate or everything in heading mode. Why would you want the rudder to be in rate mode? Well, I demonstrated this in my flight testing of the model to myself. If you're trying to do a turn and the aircraft is in heading mode, the rudder is going to try and oppose the turn and keep you pointing in the original direction. So as you're gently turning left, the rudder is going to be putting in more and more right and trying to get you back the original way. So it's better to have a rudder in rate mode rather than heading mode. The rudder in heading mode is good for if you're trying to do things like hovering and some of the 3D stuff, but for normal flying around, not so good. How do we get around this with the Jeti? Well, in a sense we can't, but any slight movement of the stick, like holding in a little bit up elevator or just touching the rudder or holding a little aileron, whatever, jumps the whole thing into rate mode, and the rudder, for the time that you are holding the sticks off center, will be in rate mode and not opposing the turn. But if you were to leave the sticks at neutral, it will try and oppose the turn. I tested this by putting on about 10 to 20 degrees of bank, brought the sticks back to neutral, and watched what happened. Of course, the gyro in heading mode held the nose up, it held the bank perfectly, but of course being banked over, the aircraft now tries to turn. And as it tries to turn, the rudder opposes it. And so what it did is fly along in a sort of very gentle sort of knife edge side slip. But just touch any of the controls and it goes into rate mode. So there's a sudden little twitch in yaw as the rudder heading mode comes off and happily moves on. So be aware of that limitation. Now, a disclaimer. You use this method of programming the assist entirely at your own risk. I am not saying that this is a good way to set up the assist or that this is how you should set up assist. It's a suggestion that I have found works for me and my flying style, and it works on one particular model so far, and I'm sharing this suggestion with you. It's really only suitable for certain models and for people who understand the hazards of heading hold, because it does have hazards. Heading hold can do bad things. I've just told you a little bit about, the rudder opposing a turn if you've not held the controls a little bit off center to keep it in rate mode. What else? Well, let me read you the instruction manual for the assist.
Inactivity alarm.
Be quiet, dear. I'm going to have to sort her out, give it a bit longer. Right, here is the Jeti Assist manual. Paragraph 4.3.3, normal damping airplanes. This is a basic mode for flying suitable for takeoffs and landings. In this mode, you can use trims even for stabilized axes. Now, paragraph 4.3.4, heading hold airplanes. A mode designed for those aerobatic figures where it is necessary to maintain the constant flight direction. These include, for example, hovering or knife-edge flight. Do not use the heading hold mode at takeoffs or landings, as there may be a risk of stalling at low speeds, and the stabilization would increase the effect even more, which could lead to a crash. Do not use the trims in this mode, because any shift of the center position will be perceived as an instruction to start rotation. Okay, so having told you that I'm thrilled with how this worked on this airplane, and it's very good, I now seem to be trying to put you off. I'm just trying to put you off if you're a newcomer to gyros and you think this is the panacea for any problems you have. No, it can introduce other problems you're not aware of. In general, gyros instructions tell you do not use heading mode for takeoff, because it can maybe help lead to a stall. Also, as the model's bouncing about going over the grass or even tarmac runways, the heading gyro is putting in more and more and more control, trying to cope with the fact that this surface you're on has developed ever such a slight slope. And of course the aircraft's not responding to the controls because the wheels are on the ground, and it finally comes off the ground with the controls in some massively wrong position. Not good at all. As far as I'm aware, in terms of sort of normal fixed-wing aircraft gyros, a Powerbox I gyro is the only one where the manufacturer says this is perfectly suitable to leave in heading hold mode for takeoff. And indeed I've done so many, many times on some models, and it works fine. So how do we overcome that with our Jeti Assist? Well, for example, on my little biplane here, on takeoff, I'm holding in up elevator because this one's very prone to nosing over, and doing a bit of rudder steering. So my sticks are off center, it's in rate mode as it comes off the ground. And as it sort of gets into a nice gentle climb, my sticks are back at neutral, it pops back into heading mode. Coming into land, again, I'm starting to pull in a little bit of up elevator, doing a little bit of steering. Because I've started to pull in up elevator just to hold the speed or the flare, it's popped out of heading mode into rate mode, and I'm in rate mode for the landing. So you have to consider If you had a model, say, with a tricycle undercarriage, and it's very, very good at keeping itself going straight on takeoff without you needing rudder to steer it. It may be going, into a nice breeze that's holding it straight, and it's going to come off the ground on its own without you pulling back on the elevator. It could well come off the ground in heading mode, in which case the heading mode might have been trying to apply massive control deflections to cope with some bump or perceived slope on the ground, which is not good as it comes off the ground with some massive correction in it. As for Jeti saying the risk of stalling, yes, it's there, but I think that is probably less of a problem than you think. For example, I did stall testing with this Hawker Demon. In level flight, I let go of the sticks. Well, I didn't let go of them, but I made sure they're all at neutral, so it's in heading mode. And from about 2/3 throttle, which is the cruise power position, I brought the power back to 1/3 and then back to idle. In fact, engine off because it's electric. And all that happens is it starts to do what you would expect a model to normally do, which is slow down and gently lower the nose and start in a gentle nose down, steeper and steeper, pointing itself towards the ground and descending all the way in heading mode. The difference is that sort of curved flight downwards that it takes is a lot more gentle than it would have been without the heading mode, because of course initially the heading mode starts to pull in a bit of up elevator to try and prevent it. But the gains are very low. I'm not trying to hover with this model, so I don't have high gains for, zero forward speed flight. I'm doing normal flying, so it's very low gains, which means the heading mode cannot apply much elevator. And it comes a point where it's applied all the elevator that it's allowed to, which isn't enough to stall the model. And so you just get this nice, gentle descent. I also tried exactly the same thing in a sort of 30 to 45 degree climb. Pull up, sticks to neutral, it's in heading mode, throttle back, and wait to see what happens. Well, the nose gently comes down, and it stabilizes in a nice gentle descent at a modest speed, very stable. If it wasn't in heading mode, the nose would have dropped earlier, because of course there'd be no gyro trying to hold the nose up, but the nose would have dropped a lot further. The model would have accelerated, or it does accelerate, and it then starts pulling its nose up, and it gets nose up until it slows down and it drops, and so it starts all this phugoid until the phugoids get smaller and smaller and eventually damp out. With the heading gyro in, it got to a slower speed, of course, because the heading gyro is starting to apply up elevator to hold it, but it doesn't have much up elevator that it can apply. So the nose gently drops down, the gyro's holding in all the elevator that it can, so the nose doesn't drop very far, and it immediately stabilized in a gentle descent instead of going through the steeper descent and then all the phugoids. So yes, there is a risk if you've got high enough gain that it could stall a model. So I've done my best to try and put you off this, having told you that it's a lovely mode to fly in. I just want you to be aware that it's not the panacea for all ills that you might think it is if you haven't got experience with gyros. Okay, so if you want to take this on, do this at your own risk. Yep. Now then, let's see how we go about it. Well, 1, you must have already set up the assist properly and done flight testing in your rate mode to set the gains properly. You must do a fresh reassignment of the primary controls to teach the assist the neutral trim values. While rate mode is quite happy with you having the trims a little bit off center, you can trim a model, heading hold mode is not. It sees any movement away from what it believes is the neutral as an instruction to start rolling, pitching, yawing, whatever. So you must have re-taught it the primary stick values so that it knows that whatever value it's getting, if you've done any trimming, sub-trimming, whatever, is the neutral. Okay? And finally, whenever you try out something new with a gyro, you take off with the assist switched off. Get to a safe height, switch the assist on, and test that it's actually working safely and properly. Yeah? And then consider whether you want to land with it still switched on. Okay? But that's a truism for all changes you make to a gyro, or whenever you fit a new gyro or whatever. Never try taking off with something unknown on a gyro, otherwise it could go very wrong very, very, very quickly. Okay, I've laboured the point a lot, but I really don't want you to follow this method and find you've got problems. Okay, so if you recall dubious, don't do this. What do we do? Well, we're going to create a new function. It's down here. You can see I've got a gain control on P8, which is now deactivated because I went into the function curve for gain and set it to a constant value so that once I'd established the gain I wanted. Gyro is my main on-off switch. Right, this is the function we need, gyro mode, and we assign it to a logic switch. In this case, it's logic switch 4 because I've got other logic switches doing other things in this model. Okay, so pick your free logic switch. Servo assignment, you need a channel for gyro mode so that the assist can pick it up. Okie doke. And then our logic switches, and there's 2 of them. And here they are, and they're very simply cascading OR switches looking to see if the elevator or the aileron or the rudder stick have been moved fractionally away from the neutral position. So let's have a look at this one first of all. Control 1, P1 is aileron, there it is. P2 is elevator. Doesn't matter which way around you do these, it could be the rudder and aileron, whatever, as long as all 3 of them eventually end up in it. And the value we're looking for here is that X is outside the 3%. So it's not X is greater than, but the bar X bar greater than 3%. What that means is if it finds the stick has moved 3% either way from neutral, it will switch on. So I'll move a tiny bit of aileron to the left, watch it switch on when it gets to 3%, there we go, and a tiny bit to the right, 3%, and it goes. And if I move P2, which is my elevator, again, 3% up, 3% down, switches on. And it's an OR function, so that either of them will make it switch on. Why 3%? Why not 1%? I found that my sticks at anything less than 3% tended to remain switched on rather than off with the stick at neutral. I've recently recalibrated, so that should be fine. Maybe it's age, maybe it's just lack of precision on the logic switch. I don't know. But anyway, 3% for me was the smallest value at which I could be absolutely guaranteed that the stick at neutral switched off, but a tiny movement made it switch on. Okay, and then logic switch 4 is just logic switch 3 as an input, and the third axis, which in this case was my rudder stick. As you can see, again, the same. If it's outside 3%, again, it's an OR condition. So the result of the output of this switch is that if any 1 or 2 or 3 of the sticks are moved a tiny bit from neutral, the output of this one switches on. And this is the switch that we assigned as the control in the function assignment for the gyro mode. Okay, so having got that, we go in and we look inside the assist. Into our configuration, and we need to assign the gyro mode channel. Assign the primary flight channels. Remember, I said you must do that as a step before you go and fly, because you need to be absolutely sure it's picking up the trim settings that you've got as the neutral value for the heading mode. Anyway, assign additional channels. Here we are at the flight mode channel. It's picked up that I was using channel 8 and it's in flight mode 1 at the moment. Now, normally you would press edit and you would move the control that you want to be the flight mode channel, for instance, a 2 or 3 position switch. And because that would be the only channel that's moving, the assist sees that and says, aha, that's your channel. Of course, the way we're going to make this flight mode channel change is by moving the control stick. Now, if you start wiggling the control stick, the assist will see that as much as it sees the flight mode channel changing. And it might well use, the stick. However, all you need to do is move the stick by 3%, and the flight mode channel 8 will flick from, plus 100% to minus 100%, for example, whereas the stick has only moved 3%. And so the assist straight away, for me, picked up the correct channel because it saw a massive movement on channel 8, but only a tiny movement on the elevator, for example. So don't go whacking the stick around because it'll pick up the wrong mode channel. Yeah. If you find it still picks up the wrong mode channel, no matter how gently you move the stick, just go to one of your channels, say the elevator, servo setup, turn the travels down to 0, come back here, move the elevator stick, it'll pick up the flight mode channel, and then go back to your servo setup and reset it. But it should do it if you just move the stick very slightly. Okay, back a bit. Okay, and into our flight modes. So here we go. It tells you here what the active mode is at the moment, mode 1. And if I move any one of the sticks, it's gone to active mode 3. Back to active mode 1, mode 3. The reason it's jumping from 1 to 3 is because, of course, the output of the final logic switch is simply 2 position. It's on or off, which means it goes from plus 100 to minus 100. There's no in between. So it's acting like a 2 position switch, which gives you mode 1 or mode 3. Active mode 1, I'm not touching the sticks, so active mode 1, I set to be heading hold. If I hold the stick a little bit off center, it goes into mode 3, and so I set mode 3 to the normal mode. Okie dokie. And once you've done that, just go into your modes and check the relevant numbers. Yeah, I would suggest leave it at its assist's default gain of 50, damping only switched on. Same in here, damping only switched on. And that's it. But remember all my words of caution. If you're not entirely sure what you're doing, do not do this. Just put your assist into rate mode and leave it there. I'm not telling you that this is a good way to set up the assist, or this is the way to set up the assist. I'm offering it just as an option for experienced users who know what they're doing and understand the hazards of heading hold and know how to test gyros. Okie doke, have fun with it.